the second most interesting man in the world, John Macaluso the third.
Yes, man, that's me. I
By
wish
the way,
it came with some more notoriety, but unfortunately,
yeah. I am the original Mr. 305. So there you go. No notoriety either. Yeah, bro. Glad to see you. Glad to see you're healthy. You're doing good, because I know you've been through hell and back
yeah,
in the last couple of years. And we get into that, but you reached out to me, wanted to talk about some issues. You wanted to start up. And I said, man, let's just have a conversation, because that's a lot. I mean, I did a lot of work over the weekend for you. I did some marketing analysis and took a look at what the competition's like and the market and all that. I really like your market, actually. It's got a ton of potential. So if most people would say, oh, there's not a whole lot of money there, but there's a lot of money around you, a lot of good competition too. Right in your house. And that's, people are like, pissed off about the competition, but to me, I like it, because that shows that there's potential, or if not, they wouldn't be there.
right.
So that's, to me, I mean, when I see that, it compared to Miami, though, that's not even competition, but it's there. So it's a good thing. So, bro, just tell us about, because I know you've been through a lot. We met back in the cemetery several years back. We've had little conversations back and forth. So what's been going on? I mean, for the last couple of years.
Well, just getting through treatment, dude. So most of you guys that know me from the sim, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in 2018. And it really just, I mean, what do you do? Right. Like, I mean, I had to reassess literally every aspect of my life. It's been so difficult. But the great thing is, because of a lot of the communities and a lot of guys that I've met in the pest industry, it just, so many people reached out. We had a family friend that was trying to help us do some things, and we had some pretty big name, people, man, in the industry reach out to me and try to help and ask what we needed, which was really like, it's a weird thing, because I got into pest in 2002, and I was just a technician, but working for different operators and seeing how, corporate companies run from, the family business type setting. I think, at least for me anyway, I gained a lot of respect for certain aspects, but also a lot of resentment for a lot of the way, some of the companies were running and treating their guys and whatnot. And I don't know. I think at that point, like right before I found out I was sick, I was trying to make a decision. Like, do I want to stay in this? Is it really beneficial for me? What has it done for my life? And I was almost ready to just like get out everything, just cut ties, go back to school, learn something different. And I think between, the cancer stuff and just talking with everybody and so many people trying to keep me boosted and be positive, it almost like reinvigorated me, man, while I was going through treatment. And I think that's a big part of, any illness anyway, is you have to have some positivity to kind of carrot string you, right? Like, that's what I was doing. I was going, okay, man, like when I get through my next round of chemo, like I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And the ultimate goal was really like, I wanted to get well enough to go back to school, to take my certified operator, to really just put my life in a place that it wasn't at before. And honestly, I don't think it would be if that would have never happened, because it's complacency and it's just like the mundane. Everybody gets in that kind of groove. And I'm not happy that happened to me, but at the same time, a lot more positive came out of it than what I'd ever thought. So,
yeah, thank God, because I mean, when you get that news, man, stage 4, I mean, if it's stage 1, you're saying, okay, you're more positive.
Yeah. I mean, even like 3, it's like, the statistical probability is moderately in your favor with today's medicine. Once you cross over into that line, and that was one of the strange things, was like my initial treatment plan, they put me on a clinical trial. And if I wouldn't have went to that, I don't think they would have found other things that I had going on. And so it was almost like a blessing in disguise that I got booted out of the clinical trial because I was now a stage 4 patient. So they kind of ramped me from, a standard care to a different treatment protocol that they don't do, or they weren't doing back then anyway, at my facility, which is Moffitt in Tampa. I mean, knock on wood, brother, I'm still here. I think I've got one more set of scans and blood work before they cut me loose and say, hey, bro, you're 5 years out, you're back in general population. I know I'm not that naive. I will still go to my primary care every 6 months. Like,
Yeah.
just things you have to do. But in the meantime, right, this is kind of where all this came about. I just wanted more, dude. I wanted more for me. I wanted more for my kids. I wanted more for my wife.
Of course.
And it was such a big drive for me, and I didn't know what to do. And so, I did reach out to some other very close friends of mine, and everybody has their kind of tidbit and their info, but that's one thing I wanted to do, was kind of reach out to you, because I mean, that's how I kind of initially met you, was I started watching all your YouTube stuff and taking in all the info. Cause really at that time I couldn't find much information on, protocols and treatments and just everything, all the nitty gritty that I wasn't finding where I was working. And it's kind of led me all to saying, hey dude, I think it's time for you to do your own thing. And I've seen so many people become successful, and it just felt like every time I try to go after it, like something else would knock me back. And it was always something. And again, maybe that's a lot of personal excuses. And I mean, I'm not ashamed to say that. Again, prior to cancer, like I was just kind of going with the flow and trying to figure it out. And I mean, I'm going to be 40. So it wasn't like I was some, 18-year-old kid out here bumbling through life. Like I really was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And that's some of the negativity that comes along with it too. It's like you get online and you read and it's like, oh bro, like it's too late. It's like, what, and so that's why I think having access to all this information that we have today, because let's face it, like what you're doing, what some of the other groups are doing, those things just weren't there when I first started. And so it's been great to tap into it, but also it's intimidating. Because there's so much stuff, and these groups, you and I have talked about it in the past. Some of them, I'm not going to say they're not focused on helping a single owner operator or somebody who's an upstart, but there's definitely a huge push on, get out there, build your business, hire guys. And I'm sitting here like, well, what if I just want to be me? What if I just want to keep it simple? Because one of the things that has always stuck with me was a really great friend of mine told me one time. I asked, I said, hey man, if you could do something differently, what would you have done? And he said, the only thing I could say is I liked it when I was small, because I felt invisible and I didn't like, there was no persona. You just went to work. You just did your thing. And, the amount of stress that I see some of my friends under running these businesses, for me, it's not what I want. And so that's why I reached out to you, because I'm like, man, Frank, I need some ideas, man. Like, I don't want to get sucked into that, because it seems like there's just so much push and emphasis on, oh yeah, man, get out there, get a guy in a truck, and who knows? I'm not saying that's an impossibility. I'm just saying that for right now, a guy who hasn't been in the industry for almost 5 years because of health issues, I can't just jump right out here and go, run 25 stops a day. Like it's not going to happen. And because of my cancer treatments and the surgeries that I've had, it's never going to happen like that for me. That's my physical limitation. And I'm okay with that, dude. So
it's the reality. And I had to face that 2 years ago. As most people don't know. I mean, some do, some don't. It depends how they follow me. I went through what you went through. I just went through it when I was 10.
Yeah.
It was 6 years of chemo. I was literally back then. This has gone so far, but every protocol I was on was a literally clinical trial. They were putting cocktails together. They had no clue in the 80s
Right.
of what was, so when I went through it and I went through my leukemia as a child, I lost my entire childhood. It was all in hospitals. So
Yeah.
I didn't know what a life was outside of a hospital until after 18.
Yep.
And then I just decided I'm going to go to work because all I wanted to do was work and make money. So to me, I get it. And then I just faced a new reality after 50, of where a lot of the stressors of personal problems took a toll on my health. It did. It just floored me. I was running on adrenaline from the time I started my podcast and started my new business, because this was a new business in 2014,
Right.
to go all the way to 2020, right before COVID, and dealing with 3 to 4 years of just personal stress and separations, and then running at 100%, that stress with personal problems. My health just took a dive. My body just said, you got to stop.
Yeah.
You can't
there's
run
a breaking point for everybody.
And that was my breaking point, where I'd ran an adrenals for so long, and then I literally crashed and burned, where I could not work more than 1 or 2 hours a day.
Right.
And then I would spend 3 to 4 days in bed from chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
It was,
and a lot of that too is those treatments. That's the gift that keeps giving, right? Like that never really goes away for a lot of people.
No, a lot of the chemicals that were given to me, a lot of the body pain I feel, and muscles and cramps and things. At one point I thought I had muscle atrophy and some nerve damage from it, because the chemos that were used cause a lot of nerve damage.
Yeah.
It's a miracle that, both of us are miracles that we're still here. And that gives us a renewed sense of purpose. This is why I'm relentless at what I do, because I realize I know I have a purpose. I'm not left behind to just be average or whatever, but I'm one of those guys who just does push it, and goes out there and hustles and does all that. And I had to learn to take a step back, reevaluate my life at 50. I had a reevaluation somewhere around 30, but at 50, I can no longer do a lot of the things physically that I used to do at the same pace with the same intensity. You slow down. And what I can handle as far as stress today that I could have handled 10 years ago, it's nowhere near the stress I can handle. My stress levels, I'm keeping them intentionally low and managing that, because it does take a toll on me physically.
Yeah. And that's important, right? I was always, I don't know. I think you just get busy, especially when you're really young, right? You're just out there doing your thing. You don't think about, like, man, you'd see your dad come in from work and he's just ragged. Like, I never thought about that until I got to a point in my life where I was like, wow. Like, it all does kind of catch up at some point,
It does. It catches up to you. A lot of the things that I worry about, a lot of these guys that I'm talking to that are at the high level, is the stress they went through, because I saw their journey.
Right.
And I saw how their life was, and how they didn't enjoy it, because they were in that growth stage. When you're young and you're in your 20s and your 30s, and a lot of it has to do with pedigree.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have it, some people don't. You sacrifice a lot of things before you get married, before you have kids, and then you're supposed to be stable at that point, and then you can tend to your family and your kids. So yeah, it's fine to burn the candle at both ends, like I did when I was in my 20s, running a store and having a business and having 2 businesses at the same time. But I can no longer do that. I have to really, and then on top of that, you throw in my ADD, which is chronic for me, and I really have to focus. And so now I'm a lot more focused, which is actually a good thing, because a lot of guys that I see out there in the groups, they think they're serial entrepreneurs. They're not. They're just maniacs, because you're trying to run a landscape yourself, and you're trying to do pest control and you're doing inspections and you're doing this and you're like, I'm burned out, and you're saying you're burned out. I says, but I told you, you can't, you're not a
Right.
serial entrepreneur when you're doing it all yourself. You're a serial entrepreneur when you own 5 businesses and they all run themselves.
Yeah.
Not when, not when you're
and
doing it yourself. I thought I was,
right.
and I wasn't, because I had a landscape division, and I had a home care division, and I had a pest control division, and we had a pool service division. And a lot of times I had to juggle between, because if one of my guys was out, I had to go do it.
Right.
So I didn't own a business. I had a very good job that I worked at a lot of different things, but I didn't have a business. And I think that this either over glorification of the entrepreneur today is so romantic, and yet so misunderstood and so romanticized,
Yeah.
that a lot of people would want to be that, and then they don't realize the price that their family has to pay, that your kids
And
have
I'll
to
say
pay.
this, I watched my dad do that my whole life, right? Build businesses. And it was, some were better than others. He had a lot of fumbles. But he spent so much time, worrying about, like, I got to get this thing done, or what, and it took time away from us.
Yeah.
And my dad recently passed away from rapid onset ALS. And, seeing him go through that, and obviously, dealing with my own struggles, that's the biggest reason for me to push to. And I mean, I'm not trying to offend anybody, because I do have a lot of friends that are in that kind of mode of just banging everything out when they can. But I'll say this, if you're doing that and you're not enjoying something,
Right.
why, like, I just don't understand that.
Yeah. With
It
me,
should be working for you, not against you. And
yeah.
that's what a lot of my friends wind up having issues with, is they're just not able to enjoy something. And I'm like, man, I've always felt like, hey, you can go do something, you don't gotta love it, you ain't gotta like it, but as long as it gives you enough to go do the things that you want to do somewhere else, that's
Right.
okay, right?
Right.
Because, like you were saying earlier, I think a lot of the there's a fallacy of just like, oh, you gotta love everything and every day. And I don't, that's not everybody, and I think the people that do
I
are
don't think
very
I don't think
lucky.
it's realistic.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
I
don't
think
think.
the people that find that niche for them is they're very lucky, and good for them.
Yeah.
I mean, I love what I do. But I'm not going to bed every night like dreaming about it. I think for me,
Yeah.
I enjoy more of just the interactions with people. That's probably the biggest thing for me. And that's another kind of driving factor, was just being able to be part of people's lives. And then when you leave it and they're still contacting you like years later, you're like, oh wow, like I never really realized the impact
Right.
that you can have on other people. And I don't think that's trained a lot either, in our industry, right? Because for various reasons, I'm sure. But just to know that, like, one little thing that you do a day could really change and impact somebody else's life years later. I mean, I'm seeing all of that full circle now, and it's stuff that I just kind of brushed off in my earlier years, but it really is true. You got to do what you could do now. And that's multifaceted, right? There's many aspects and angles of that. Whatever it is for you, I think it's it's easy to get lost and caught up in all the stuff going on, and you can derail very quickly. And that's where I
Yeah.
knew I wanted to stay in this, just simply because I still had the drive, I still had the idea, I still had
Right.
the want, even through all of this, right? It's something that, coming out at the end of the tunnel, I wanted to do it. And I mean, I had people telling me not to. Oh, bro, like, you had cancer, why are you gonna stay? It's like, dude, do I need to bring you all my genetic sheeting from a major NCIS hospital that'll show you that what happened to me has literally nothing to do with what I did for work? People don't
Yeah.
care. It's just
Yeah.
their opinion and their
Right.
attitude. I don't know. Like I say, it's just a big deal for me. And I try to stay connected, especially through social media, with everybody, with all of you guys,
Right.
because it just meant more to me than, I'm in a group, and like I can get the little badge of, whatever they give you that month.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it was more about friends, and a lot of my friends here turned into family, and I'm just so thankful for that.
Yeah.
There's some big name guys. Man, I'm not going to mention them, but there's some
Yeah.
great people. Just
Yeah.
some really
Yeah.
great people that we know. So
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys in this industry who are actually pretty big, who don't show it because they don't have to brag about it. They've accomplished it. And a lot of those people reach out to me, and they give me good advice, and they see where I'm hustling and what I'm doing, and what I'm about. So I get a lot of good advice. I get a lot of good intel from people that have actually done it. And then there's those who are pretending to be something that they're not. They're not even close. It's like people thought I'm this big huge company. I've always said I'm only 2 guys, 3 guys. I've got I got 4 or 5 people working for me, at most, at any time. And so I'm not this big company. I don't pretend to be. I just want to do this, a lot of this. I've been meditating over the weekend. Like, I try not to do nothing on my weekends. Sometimes it'll be bed all day because I'm exhausted from the whole week. I've had a hell of a week, out in the field, dealing with the office, dealing with the calls. I mean, I get 15 to 20 calls a day that I got to handle. That's
yeah,
on top of the emails. That's on top of the text. That's 25, 30 communications a day
yeah,
that I'm managing. It takes a toll on you and then you're trying to be in the field. And like my techs say all the time, bro, that phone of yours is ringing every 5 minutes. I would lose my mind if I had to do tech work
yeah.
and answer all the questions. Now you know how I feel when I got to go in the field and do it.
Yep. And
When you
that's like a big thing, I think, when you're a tech and you're like, oh, hey, I'm just gonna go out on my own. And I mean, I was naive to it really until I got
Right.
around a lot of you guys. I was like, whoa. I mean, you don't realize how much behind the scenes stuff has to go on, like just to get you in a truck to a house.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just yesterday, I mean, like, I try to work the hours. I try because I don't do mornings very well. For me, I get like, I'm ever since for the last 2 or 3 years, I wake up foggy head, and that's part of the chronic fatigue. I'm usually more functional afternoon, and I'm alert and I'm really engaged, and then I can do the creative stuff and all the stuff I need to. So I go out in the field, I take care of a couple of problems. So yesterday I was working on marketing, and I was actually looking at your stuff in your area, and analyzing that and saying, oh, this is a pretty neat market. It's weird market for me, but it's neat. It's neat the way
yeah,
it's laid out. And I said, definitely it could be done, with no problem. But I was working on that and working on analytical stuff that I need to do for it. So I put in about 4 or 5 hours yesterday. Girlfriend's here working too, and she had to do some work, and we did that. And then Saturday, I did a little bit of work in the morning, and then I took, the rest of the afternoon off to do nothing. And I was battling this cold on top of that, so I'm like really stupid at points. I'm like, I'm incoherent. So, yeah, but this is how I function now, and how I have to work, where I can't. If you expect me to be somewhere at 7 in the morning, I
right.
literally got to really plan this out ahead, that I got to wake up at 6, and I have to, like, not eat so late, and all this stuff, at 50, that you got to start doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's been my life for like, well, I had surgery. Actually, it's coming up here soon is my anniversary date, but I had they took out like 3 feet of my colon. Like, it was brutal, dude. But all that changes you. So like, you have to start making incremental changes. And
Yeah.
that's something that I've had so much anxiety about. And after talking with you and kind of seeing that, hey man, like, it's okay to like pick and choose, like when you go, when you do, and I was just racked with anxiety because I felt like I'm going to be beholden to these appointments. Well, what if I can't run out of my house at 6:30 in the morning? Like that, there's a lot of days that I can't do that. Right.
Right.
So it's put a lot of it's just put a lot of stress on me while I've been in this pre-planning phase, because there were days where I was just like, I'm looking at stuff and I'm going, there's no way, like I can't do this. And then my wife actually said something to me. She was like, all these people that that really do love you and care about you, you don't think that they're not going to understand? And I'm like, well, some do. but that's the kind of relationship that I always built with people that I had done service for. Is it was very, uh, it was very much more personal, I think, for me. And when they know you're a human being and you have things going on, people are understanding. You just got to let them know what's going on.
Yeah. What I did years ago, and I did this by intent from when I built this new company. I literally, I've been doing pest control since 2006, but it was together merged with mostly lawn. And we were like 95% lawn because we did landscaping, we did pool. So we were out, primarily an outdoor company. I didn't do any GHP, general household pest. For those of you, GPC, for the ones that are listening to me, I only did lawn. And so therefore, when we got there and when we didn't, did not matter to the client because we didn't have any appointments for the long. I don't know what it was like to set an appointment. When I started this new company and I realized I had to do GPC, I set parameters in place to let the client know that when we do your service, we're primarily an outdoor company. And when we do an initial, we're always on a 2-hour window. Yeah. And I never set an appointment after 10 o'clock. In other words, my first appointment was between 10 and noon, and then 12 to 2 and so on. And I put everybody on a 2-hour window, and I didn't have to explain to anybody why I couldn't do it at 8 o'clock. We just don't have a spot available.
Sure. And I think so, and I don't mean to sidetrack, but I had worked for a company where there were no expectations set. Right. So they allowed the customer base to just use them and drag them around like a doormat because their service was so bad, right? Yeah. They were like constantly, they were just so worried about bad reviews and people canceling. And it's just anytime that phone rang, didn't matter. Morning, noon, night, like boom, boom, boom. You're like, somebody is going to be there in 20 minutes. Like it was
unrealistic. Yeah.
And I thought that was normal. And then I started working at other places. I'm like, wow, like that's a really, really stark contrast to, and I think again, it really speaks to the beauty of starting a business, right? And doing things for yourself is you have the capability of setting all of that up in a way in which is beneficial. Obviously you're going to do the work, but for you personally, you're not out there killing yourself. And again, I know my story is not unique in the fact that I've had, some major health setbacks, neither is yours. But I think when you're out here working, a lot of people just can't do it anymore. And they go on to, to different things where some of us just seem to be a little more stubborn.
Well, I think we fell in love with the industry, which is what I did. I fell in love with this job, with what it offered. To me, it was because I've always been a geek of sort. I've always been the chemistry guy. I had a chemistry set when I was a kid. I've always loved tinkering with stuff. To me, it offers that challenge that both from the business part, but also from the work part, but also the rewarding part. When we solve somebody's problem, because I'm a troubleshooter by nature, I think it appeals. And look, there's only 100 at best right now in the country. There's only 100. The last number I saw was 134,000 technicians in the country. Think about it. How many billions of people do we have? And there's only 134,000. Compared that to it's 5x for air conditioning. There's like, I think 500,000 air conditioning technicians in the country. They're compared to landscape technicians. There's almost 500,000 landscape technicians. I mean, the pest control industry as a whole is very, very small part of this economy, where there's only like, according to the Bureau of Labor statistic, I think there's 87,000 that are registered technicians. I think the rest are the independents that haven't registered as labor, but there's not a lot of people in this industry. There's not a lot of competition. I think there's one technician for every 2,000 homes. When you look at the numbers. So there's a lot of room, and there's a lot of room for you to be you and not worry about anything anybody else is doing. Yeah. Because like, I know those guys that it was Sunday at 10 o'clock at night and they're still answering their phones frantic because people are calling and complaining that the technician didn't show up, that how come you guys aren't there? How come nobody's answering the phone? And then the CSRs are telling the customer, yeah, the technician is going to be there in 20 minutes. And the
Right.
technician is like 45 minutes away. He says, how do you expect me to do an initial and spend
Yeah.
an hour with a client and then tell me and book all my appointments 1 hour apart and then tell the client I'm going to be there at a certain time? There's no way.
It's
It's
chaos. I mean, really.
Yeah.
You know?
And they're drinking and they're doing pot and they're doing anything they can just to cope.
Yeah.
And it's nuts. And I look at it by way, like my technicians, like right now I have people calling me and like, when is the technician going to be here? And I said, well, he's going to call you to schedule that appointment. The technician does that. But one of my technicians right now, he's in college. He's at a class. And I call him and say, hey, listen, give me a call when you get a break, so we can talk about this account, because we need to start this week and this, so we can plan it out, because we're behind 1 or 2 days from last week from the hurricane.
Yeah.
And we're behind now. And these guys are wanting to know, but I give them the freedom to schedule all this. And I tell them, sometimes I get mad at them for promising the client they're going to be there within an hour. And I said, you just did it to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I told you, give them a 2-hour window. It's
well,
okay.
You never know. I mean, stuff can happen.
But it does. I mean, this is Miami.
Yeah.
The traffic here is brutal. So I said, you do it to yourself when you give the client a specific time, when I'm giving you the freedom to give them a 2-hour window. When Comcast, AT&T, and everybody else gives
It's
you
all day.
It's a 4-hour window minimum here in Miami.
My brother works for Frontier, and it's like when you call, they're like, "Oh, we'll have a tech between 8 and 6," or it's like, because they just know, man, like you're gonna get out to a house and like something's gonna happen. You're gonna find something.
Yeah.
It's not gonna go as planned, and if you don't have that wiggle room, man, I feel like all of the really terrible things that I've seen other people do is 90% of it. It's time. It's like, oh, I don't have time, so they just throw it out and whatever. And listen, like, I'm not going to be that guy, but let's be real here. Like, it just happens, right? And it winds up costing more money later because, hey, guess what? You're going back there. And as a tech, if you never set that time space for yourself, which a lot of guys can't, and they're not allowed to, it's never going to get fixed. So then you've been to the same house 8, 9, 10, whatever for service calls, and you're walking in the door. You think that person in there is happy? Like, imagine being that guy, getting up and seeing your schedule and being like, oh, Jesus, like it's Mrs. Smith again. And that's just something that I used to see so much.
We tell the
really
people,
tough.
People ask me all the time, do you guys offer free reservice? And I said, listen, we can offer all the free reservices, but after we've reserviced your house for free 3 times and you've had to take time off from work, the free reservice doesn't mean anything. I said, we want to solve it. And a lot of customers, like right now, we're turning down because houses in Miami are in so much disrepair because of the rental market, 50% rental market. And people don't understand, these owners don't want to put any money into these houses. We got homes that are in the Coral Gables area, which is, I mean, the minimum home there's $1 million for a 1,500 square foot home, these old 1950 homes. And these landlords don't want to put $2,000-3,000 into exclusion work. They're going to keep having the rodent and the roach problem, and they're renting these houses for $6,000 a month. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
I mean, easy $6,000 a month for these little homes in this ritzy place, and they don't want to put the money in. And I'm going in and going, listen, we're not going to take you on as a client, because we realize it doesn't matter if you go monthly. You're always going to have an experience, and what you're looking at is you don't want to see that American cockroach in your bathroom. And as long as you live here right now, you're going to experience that, and we can't take you on as a client. And I'm giving my techs the freedom to go in and say, evaluate that house before you do it. Do the inspection. And if you see that this is going to be a nightmare, you're not going to be able to do it, I'd rather you call me then and there and let me talk to the client and turn them down. Versus being the sales guy that I am and say, I'm going to take on every account because we're going to spread it, because the technicians are on production. Who the hell cares how many times they have to reservice it when it's only 5%? But it's like, we had one right now that the lady, for 2 years, we had a contract. We did a contract with that house. And I told her, and I said, listen, you got to fix it. For 2 years, she hasn't fixed it. Yet she will go out and buy a $67,000 antique car because they're into that, but they won't fix the house.
Yeah.
And expecting us to come back every month for free. And I just finally told her, listen, you won't fix anything. The technician has told you, look at all these holes. And I'm not talking about like little gaps, nitpicking. I'm talking about a cat can fit through there. And she hasn't fixed it. And she says, I think we need to cancel the contract if you're not going to be able to solve this problem within the next week. I says, we've been trying for 2 years. You won't do anything. I said, she just gave me the out. So I said, fine. Because I wasn't, I said, no, let's honor the contract. We signed it for 2 years. Let's just get through it till December. I'll let her know that we're not going to renew it and we'll be out of it. She called me and she gave me the way out. So but again, I could be salesman. And then it's that, John, it's that paranoia that you get into where now I have to be an IPM guy.
Right.
And then realize this is never going to work.
Yeah. But it takes a lot of strength, I think, and professionalism to approach those type of accounts where when you're new and fresh and green, you just have some guy pointing, go do this, go do, at least that's what it was for me. And then as I kind of slowly made my way in, I started to see what other people are doing. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, this doesn't make sense. And it's really like you have somebody who, they're not traditionally trained and they're training other people. So like, how many times have you heard it? It's like, show up at a yard and some guy's like, hey man, how do I mix this? And you got some guy in the back and he's like, oh man, a couple of glugs, it's like, it's just crazy. And that's part of it is, I used to feel like you have to say yes to everything all the time, especially to customers. And then I realized, wow, my friends who are real professionals who take this career seriously, they don't do that all the time, right? And you start to separate. And I think that's kind of what I started looking at people and being like, I want to be like that, I want to learn, I want to be better at this. And that takes it takes a lot of strength to say no, and just to not appease, where I think a lot of us were trained to just go in there and just yes and
become a yes man.
And that doesn't, to me, kind of going back to what you said earlier about like troubleshooting and things, it takes away a lot of that, really, because you're just in this mode and it's very robotic. And I don't know. That's not something that is really fun for me.
It becomes a monster that you have to feed, and the problem is the monster's never satisfied. Yeah, the monster's never satisfied. Yeah,
I was probably 10 years in, and I started understanding as well acquisitioning, and like, because I'd be like, why did they just buy this little company and I'm over there doing a service for $14, and it's like, nobody made money on this, dude. Nobody. And then you see that account come back up and another tech is going there. It's like, what are we doing? And so there's just so many pieces to, to these puzzles. And I think really the whole point of this for me, and reaching out to you was simplicity, right? Just start it simple and keep it that way, because I want the thing that I'm passionate about to allow me to do things that I want to do, especially things with my family, that I've missed out on. And I feel like time is short, especially for someone who's been through some traumatic stuff. Your mind doesn't revert back. And some people take that as arrogance. Some people take it as, being impatient. And I'm like, hey, if you go and you have a calendar, and on that calendar it says you got this many days, buddy, if you don't change some way, shape, or form, I don't know what to tell you. But it's just something that I am not the same guy that I was before all this happened, and I'm okay with that.
And that's and a lot of the times that's on a much deeper level, more mature. I mean, mentally, spiritually, it matures you to a certain level that other people can't appreciate the next day, because they're living for today only. And they can't appreciate what they have today. Like, wake up in the morning and say, I got to see my kids again.